All right, and we are live. I want to welcome you to our now daily shows with myself, Glenn Hausman, and my great friend and podcast co-host, Mr. Anthony Melchiorri. Today we got Mr. Sloan Dean first up on the show. He's the CEO of Remington Hotels, and then after this conversation, we're going to have a trio of great professionals from Boston University, including, thank goodness, some women on the show. I know I've been frustrated by it. I know some of the audience out there has been frustrated by it, but we're finally going to get that going. Anthony, it's really good to see you. I've been working really hard to get more positive energy as we've been going, as this reality of us being stuck at home for weeks is going. So, how you doing today? And then let's bring Sloan into the conversation.
Well, I think everyone is, got to find their own energy and they got to find their own path. And, we got to take everything that's good in our lives and really hold on to that. And as we see what's going on in the world, but I'm having a good day. I just had a friend that unfortunately tested positive, and he seemed like he was going to Disney World. He seemed happy and upbeat, and he's like, I'll get through this, and I feel better already. And so it's all about attitude, as we're talking about.
Right.
We're fortunate to be able to do this and to bring the players of our industry together. And the more I hear from people like this is becoming an important information source. So thank you, Sloan, for being here.
And Sloan, thank you again for being here. You are being beaten up, man. We're all being beaten up, but you're a young CEO. You're a new CEO. When you accepted this job that you have, when you got promoted, October, November-ish range, right?
Yeah, that's right. November. Yeah.
I certainly do not think that this was the type of challenge that you were expecting when you said, hey, I'm going to take on this challenge for being a CEO. Man, it must have freaking blindsided you at first. I want to know what that experience was like, how you pick yourself up, and how you start to move forward to be a great example to your team and stuff.
So I have a saying that everybody works for me and works with me knows, and I always say progress, not perfection. And so that's something that I live day in, day out. I think it is a day you just put one foot in front of the other, and it's progress, not perfection, particularly in these times. I think you also have to have a mindset shift. You can't just, wallow in, well, 3 weeks ago, my hotel was planning to be sold out.
Right.
To be able to pivot and say, these are the times we're living in, and be proactive and, be a leader in times of difficult circumstances. You're right. It's kind of baptism by fire. But I actually take a different vantage point, that I feel blessed that I get to lead an organization that employs 7,000 people. And because of some of the leadership that I can bring and my team can bring, we're going to make sure that we keep those people employed long term. And so I have had to furlough 6,500 of my 7,000 associates, which is absolutely brutal. It's the worst thing I've ever experienced in my career. But we are doing that so that we can protect cash flow, and we will come back stronger from this. And I've been lobbying pretty hard for the CARE Act. I sit on the American Hotel and Lodging Association Advisory Board, the board of directors, and I'm happy to hear that it passed today. And there'll be a lot of things, and that'll help our associates. And unemployment benefits are going to be expanded pretty widely. And if somebody is furloughed nationwide, they're going to be eligible for all the expanded unemployment benefits, which is good to hear.
Yes, for sure. Anthony?
And that's really important information. That's what people want to hear. I want to get into that in 1 second. I want to back up a little bit, Sloan. Tell people who you are, what you do, how many hotels you have. Do you own them? Do you manage them? Explain what you do.
Yeah, so Remington Hotels is a Dallas-based firm. We have 88 hotels, mostly full service, everywhere from Boston, Manhattan, down to Key West, over to San Diego, up to Anchorage. We're in 27 states. We've got 35 Hilton branded hotels, 36 Marriott, 13 independents, and then a smattering of Hyatt and IHG. We do about 1.1 billion in annual revenue. And we manage for 8 different capital groups, but we're mostly known as the affiliate, or have been known as the affiliate, of Ashford Hospitality Trust and Braemar Hotels and Resorts. but we are actually operating for a lot of other institutional capital groups. And so I'm pretty evenly distributed throughout the U.S., even though we're a Texas-based firm. And I'm the CEO. We've got 184 associates in the corporate office, and then we've got around 6,800 out in the field.
Wow. Hey, listen, Anthony, before you continue that, I asked where people are from. We got people coming from all over the country today, and it's really exciting to see this community coming together from all the different corners of the United States. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and get set to ask your questions because we want to be able to help you. Anthony, please continue.
So I asked this question to our guest yesterday. I'll ask you today. Tell me the first step you took this morning until the last step you took to sit down and do this interview. Tell me what your day was like so far.
Yeah, so I got up this morning, and I think, there's a little interesting fact. I've actually been in quarantine myself. So I got tested for COVID-19 last week. I haven't gotten the results back, but I'm actually, yesterday was the first time I was symptom free. So my day is a little unique in that I'm working from my master bedroom. But I got up, I had 2 lobbyists that I spoke to before I took a shower. I think keeping a daily regimen is critical in this environment. I do a daily Zoom at 9 a.m. with my entire executive team where we go through, situation room, war room. We meet 7 days a week, even on the weekends.
Right, of course.
And then we go through we have 78 of our 88 hotels are still operating. And we're trying to keep them open as long as we can. And so we go through different situations of that. And then I had a media call, and then I got on here with you guys. So unfortunately, I'm as busy as I've ever been, but it's a different environment. We're obviously dealing with politicians in ways I've never dealt with them, et cetera, trying to get help for our associates.
Okay, so when sorry, Anthony, please continue.
You're dealing with your company, you're dealing with your employees, and you're dealing with being quarantined, and I hope you feel better, and I hope the results are a good result for you. So tell me something to inspire people where you saw somebody say something to, or you heard somebody say something to you, or saw something, an act of kindness in the last 24 hours that helps you get through this. Because again, being a CEO in your position, that you have been in this position for 30 years, I mean, it's coming at you pretty fast. So tell me something uplifting.
Yeah. So 2 things. One, I think people have to come together. You have to have a higher empathy factor. And I'll give you an example. We are in 14 different cities and municipalities bidding, offering our hotels to be medical or quarantine facilities for the government. That's the right thing to do.
Right.
And I had a conversation with a city official yesterday where they made the reference of, us as a company being willing to work with them. It was uplifting to them that they didn't ever think a for-profit business would be willing to serve as a medical facility to aid the local city.
Right. That's interesting, Sloan, because we're seeing a lot of people take different points of view on that. And it's a question that comes up every single day on our live broadcast, which I should say we're trying very hard to move forward with at noon every day from this point forward. So guys, mark your calendars out there for our show every single day at noon. But some people say they don't want to do it. Some people say they do want to do it. But it sounds like you're not coming at it from a point of view of profitability, but one of trying to do what's right for our country.
We got to help each other. I mean, this is going to get worse. They're calling for the cases in New York to peak in 3 weeks. We've got to be willing to aid our local cities. And so we've taken of course, we don't want to lose money. There's also the liability. There's a lot of employment risk, a lot of general liability. The structure what we've tried to figure out with cities is actually leasing the building for a temporary period of time that will indemnify the operator from employment risk and general liability. Let's say, God forbid, there's a death from COVID-19. If they're leasing it, it protects you some. But I think it's incumbent on us that the for-profit businesses have to help. This is not just, survival. It's also we need to help our brethren in our local cities that are going to be the medical facilities in certain cities are going to be completely overwhelmed, and they already are.
Right. How do you fight that impulse then to do the right thing for society and not only look at what's good for your company and yourself as a human being?
Well, I think there's some alignment there in that we do what's right for the local cities because we're part of those local cities. So the faster we can help them get back to normalcy, the better our hotels will be. So I think there's alignment there naturally that you help the local city survive this crisis. And, I think you can also, there's fixed costs in hotels. If all of a sudden you can lease it to medical or you're taking care of doctors, it's going to offset some of your fixed costs. Even if you shutter a building, you're going to have some minor utility costs. You're going to have property taxes, et cetera. And so we take the advantage that what's good for the city is good for us in a lot of cases. And we try to be smart around the liability.
Right. Yeah, well, that makes a whole lot of sense. Now, you're in an unusual situation where you want to keep as many hotels open, but certain jurisdictions, such as Napa and Key West in particular, where you have properties, have ordered you to close the property, while other jurisdictions are saying you're an essential service and you've got to stay open. Is there one thing that's better than the other? How are you negotiating the fact that things are different in each other cities? I always thought it was weird that I have to take my laptop out of the bag with the TSA in one city, but not the other. This is a lot more complicated of a situation you're dealing with.
Yeah, my general counsel is definitely busy with all the different, quite frankly, I wish the federal government would have came out with kind of a one mandate all to make life easier. Because there's San Francisco is the first to come out with a shelter in place, and then you've had all these different municipalities, and now you have states coming out with either a variation of stay home, shelter in place, or non-essential businesses shuttered. And just a clarification on your point, most all of the state and city ordinances define a hotel without gaming as a shelter. And so in the definition, for people listening in, you may say, well, they said the closure of non-essential businesses. Almost all municipalities and states define a hotel as a shelter first and foremost. And so you can stay open in limited capacity in most of those cases. The reason Napa and Key West, and I think a few other cities that we don't operate in, are different is they have come out and effectively said they had specific ordinances around hotels where they said, one, you can't take any new reservations, period.
Right.
And then two, they came out and said you cannot house anyone that's not medical or recovery related. And they mandated that in-house guests be basically pushed out of the area. And so they went further than anyone else. But I think what we're seeing in some areas where we managed to stay open, I think we will pick up some business over the next couple of weeks because, the majority of our comp set has shut down. But that's also part of our strategy is stay open as long as we can to help with the recovery, to help through the crisis. But, if all of a sudden you have 10 hotels in a market and 8 of them are shut down, and then there's FEMA and medical business coming in, we're going to benefit from that.
Right. Anthony?
If you had to break it down to 3 prongs of how we help the employee, how we help small businesses in the hospitality industry, what is the first thing that has to happen from the government, from lobbying right now? What's the first thing, second thing, third thing? And what has happened that has been the most impactful to our industry in the last 24 hours in a positive way?
In a positive way, yeah. So they're calling for over probably 2 million unemployment in hotels by the end of the month. So that's basically 50% of our workforce. The first most important thing of the CARE Act that will pass today is direct payments to Americans up to a certain income level, and I believe it is going to be $1,200 for individuals and $2,400 for families, and it's capped at $100,000 and $99,000 income for an individual, and I think double that for a family. So right now you have, unemployment they're calling for could peak in May at 30% in the U.S. If you count furloughs. They have first and foremost is get money into the hands of everybody who's living paycheck to paycheck. And so what they're going to do is similar to what they did in 2011 is direct checks to individuals. That's first. I think the second thing is they had to expand unemployment benefits immediately. And so it's expanded to 4 months. They're increasing the amount you can collect through unemployment. And so a lot of furloughed folks or laid off folks will be able to collect their full pay for a 4-month period is the way I'm understanding it. So that's 1 and 2 is direct liquidity to the individual who has to pay their mortgage tomorrow. And then second is increase unemployment so that you can continue to have the American consumer have money. 70% of the GDP in the U.S. is the American consumer. And all of a sudden, you've got millions of them on the sidelines. And so that's injecting direct liquidity and solving the unemployment problem is 1 and 2. The third is forbearance on the debt side. So part of the CARE Act is going to include a $350 billion to the Small Business Administration, SBA, which are going to have interest-free loans. There's going to be different qualifications for that. My understanding is if you use some of that to cover payroll, it will be forgiven.
Yes.
And then there's going to be some mandates around forbearance of commercial debt that they've not defined yet. And because you have all the companies, Marriott, Hilton, all the REITs, all owners have debt, and they're not going to be able to make debt service for the next couple of months. And so I think that's the third component to keep companies solvent. There needs to be a forbearance, basically, hey, deferring interest and mortgage for at least several months. And I think that's critical because we have a liquidity crisis that we're right in the middle of.
Right. So
what's the reality of that happening for the forbearance for the debt? What's the reality?
Well, the reality is if lenders don't work with individual owners or individual owners don't qualify for the SBA provisions that have just been passed, I think you're going to have bankruptcies go up, and you'll have a lot of receiverships to the tune much higher than what we saw during the Lehman collapse. So I think this will cause bankruptcies across the industry. It's just a question of how much. And I think if the forbearance isn't broad enough and it's not long enough, meaning, maybe we need 6 months of forbearance, 12 months, then, 3 months isn't going to cut it. You're just going to have increase in bankruptcy. And so I think that's where if you're small hotel owner operators in particular have a lot of cash in their balance sheets, are really concerned about, well, how do I even make my April mortgage?
Yeah, that's a good point. So as far as the government coming through for your company, other hospitality companies, and the individuals working for those companies, how would you rate this CARE deal on a scale from 1 to 10? And what would you have liked to have seen that you would hope to get enacted in the coming months?
I would rate it as a 4 because they should have moved faster.
Right.
Voted on this and shot it down several times because of political posturing.
Yeah.
It should have been passed last week, and they should have been, because speed matters with liquidity. And they're saying now the direct payments to the various folks. In 2011, it took 6 weeks to get checks into people's hands.
Yep.
So that's going to be a problem because they're saying most of these direct payments won't happen until May.
Oh, God.
So that's a problem. The other thing is on the forbearance. A lot of what was talked about before was that it was capped at 500 employees.
Right.
Well, most of your hotel management companies, brands, et cetera, employ a lot more than that because a lot of people don't want to be seen as bailing out big business. Well, most of the hotel industry are companies that employ more than 500 people. So we'll see what the qualifications on employment to be able to qualify for the SBA programs, et cetera. They need to have where everyone's included, regardless of employer size, because it's not going to do any good if Marriott and Hilton go bankrupt. Just because they're large companies, we need to really protect the industry. But what they did they protected the airline industry pretty broadly. We'll see if they protected the hotel industry in that same way, because some of the rules aren't spelled out yet. You
Right.
Inflation, and then they later enact some of the regulation.
Right.
So going back to the unemployment benefits, you're saying that if somebody was making $40,000 a year, the unemployment benefit will pay them fully their salary for several months?
That is my understanding. I don't know where it's capped on an income level, but that is my understanding, is that they've broadened it to 4 months of coverage, and it should, and they increased the unemployment payout per, I think the average goes up about $600 a week per person. And so they think for the majority of folks, it will get you back to almost whole. So you'll get the, majority of your income. So in that scenario, I think you're right that they would get close to what is equivalent to 40,000. I don't know the speed at which that'll happen, if that's immediate. Like, so if you go to the unemployment office, you collect unemployment, that benefit is automatically increased, or if it's over a period of time.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. You know, we are getting a lot of great questions from the audience, and I'd love to be able to ask a couple of them. Number one, on the supplier side, vendor community wants to kind of understand what are the things that you need from those types of folks? Any critical needs that suppliers can support companies like you with?
120 days forbearance on accounts payable. So what you have is you got hoteliers who didn't get out in front of this and, quite frankly, furlough enough. Most hotel management companies only keep 2 times payroll in working capital.
Right.
Folks that didn't furlough fast enough won't be able to make payroll by mid-April.
Mm-hmm.
Sure aren't going to be able to pay their parking and AV companies as well. So what you're going to have is all the third-party providers, food service companies, et cetera, are going to start not getting paid by early to mid-April. And so I think it's incumbent on those providers, to the extent they can from a cash perspective, to forbear on accounts receivable and not cut off services. I think what you're going to have in utilities, as an example, you're going to have a forbearance where, if you can't pay your power bill, that they're going to need to not cut you off for 30 or 60 days. And I think to the extent that vendors can take that angle, a lot of companies are right now seeing their working capital get depleted. And in about 3 or 4 weeks, they're going to not be able to pay vendors. And so
there's
flexibility is.
There's 2 things at play here. Obviously, the health part of it, that we hopefully will get a vaccine, and hopefully we'll start seeing this let up in the next couple of weeks, God willing. So you have that, obviously, which is critical to everything. But then what you're saying is, from the employees to the management companies to the man who's delivering fruit, or the woman who's delivering fruit, to the person growing the fruit, everyone has got to basically at this point go to a trade type of scenario until we get people out of their homes, to cash flowing again. But this isn't one level. Hey, can you forgive my rent this month, Mr. Landlord? This is, Mr. Landlord, can you forgive my rent this month? And plus, Mr. Bank, can you forgive the landlord's mortgage this month? And Mr. Mortgage Banker, whoever you get your money from, can you forgive us our interest payment? So it's really a full circle. It's not one area that has to bend. Would you say that that's
You're so spot on. You're right on, Anthony. And what we're seeing is cruise, air, hotel has already felt it. That's why all the furloughs have happened.
Right.
Coming is the wave of all the dependent businesses that are just now starting to say, well, crap, I have $10 million in accounts receivable I haven't collected from the hotels. And then they're going to turn around to their lender, who they got a corporate debt facility on, and say, well, shoot, I have all these receivables I'm not receiving. And it just creates a domino effect. And for the vendors listening in, if you haven't already seen where you got hotel partners who aren't paying, it's coming. And it's coming in the matter of days, not weeks. And your example, Anthony, is spot on, though. It's going to cause a domino effect, which is why I said speed matters, and is the primary reason I give a low grade on the CARE Act, because it should have been passed a week ago.
And I think that that's a good point. And speed, this should have all been in front before we furloughed people. We should have already kind of taken care of them so they could have stayed in their jobs. Like, get the unemployment, stay in your job, keep the hotel open, do whatever you can to maintain stability with that set, or pay them to stay home. So I'm going to ask you a question that you may have not received before, and it's a pretty extreme question, but I think, we're in an extreme situation. Employees start to lose their employment. You're not allowed to get evicted, but maybe they're in a position where maybe they're in a homeless shelter, maybe they're already living in their, friend's apartment, and they have to leave for one reason or another. Are you going to see hotels start opening up these hotels for shelters for their employees?
I think that's a great question. We've got a lot of our working employees living in the hotels because you have a shelter-in-place scenario. And so,
Interesting.
That's a great point. I think in some cases where they don't have housing, we need to take care of those associates and be able to provide that to them. I haven't had that yet. That's a great. I should take that away from this call and approach my HR team. But I think it's something that all hotel companies should have on the table, at least on a temporary basis, because we have to take care of one another.
And it goes to your question of speed. You can't make speedy decisions. The government doesn't make speedy decisions. A week is incredible if they made a decision in a week. When this comes to bear, which I would imagine in some places, in some individual cases, it will. The faster and the more prepared you are, the better it'll be for everyone. And and also we have to worry about embarrassing people. People are going to be embarrassed in their situation, financial situation, okay? Whether you're a housekeeper or whether you're a vice president of a company, and making it and softening it where you open it up at some point if it gets to that point where it's kind of, you go to them before they come to you. I'm not saying your company, I'm saying in general, if I ran a company right now that had 8,000 people, the first thing I would say, listen, if somebody comes to you, this is how you do it. It's very discreet. It's very easy, however you do it. And I think that's critical.
What I would say on this call is, more than half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And I don't think there's anything to be embarrassed about if you've got a liquidity problem. And so I think it's incumbent on any American who's listening in, who's struggling, to reach out. And I wouldn't my advice to folks would be, don't be embarrassed about your financial situation.
But there are more people prepared in management positions to reach out before I have to reach out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Then it'll be easier because you're already dealing with a million things. You don't want to embarrass your family. You don't want to embarrass yourself by looking like, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it this week. Where this house we're living in, they now need it for their family, and they're asking us to leave. Our rent is good up until this point, but I don't know where rent's coming from the next couple of months. So he has to do what he has to do for his family. Now I got to go somewhere, and we're in a very interesting situation where we have thousands and thousands and thousands of hotel rooms are empty right now that are going for zero. So that's just something not only you but companies out there that we need to start thinking about.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah. All right. I got a couple more questions from the audience. Let me try to fold a couple of them into one. So when business comes back, and I am confident that at some point it will come back, how do you think that the hotel industry itself should communicate to build up consumer trust and confidence that hotels are a safe place to sleep, meet, and eat in? And how does all of this, the second part of that, affecting the projects you might have in the pipeline?
Yeah, so I think what ends up happening is you have, we literally fell off a cliff, and then it'll be kind of a lazy V recovery. If we start to see travel come back May, June, that it's not going to come back overnight. I think it's incumbent upon us as operators to make it very publicly visible of what we're doing around cleanliness, make it very publicly visible to our account, key guests, et cetera, about what we do in the case of a COVID-19 associate or guest. We have strict policies around that, and we've made that clear. I sent it out to, IBM, et cetera, saying, hey, if you stay with us, if we have a case, this is what we do to protect our in-house guests, et cetera. So I think communication proactively is critical to make people feel comfortable. And I do think that, there needs to be also some incentives for travel by the federal government. That's actually been talked about in there's going to be more bills to come, more stimulus to come. They're not done with just this CARE Act. And I think one of the things that the travel business needs is an incentive from the federal government to companies to basically reinstate travel, because there will be a trepidation by not only individuals, but by companies to say, okay, is it safe to travel now? Just kind of the unknown. And but I think for us as operators, we need to make sure we're getting our policies and our cleanliness standards and what we're doing to keep people safe when they are staying with us, make that top of mind.
It's interesting as you're going through this, and you're extraordinarily articulate and informed, and you say that you're quarantined because you're feeling symptoms. You would never know. And I think that's an example to take away. That's why people have to quarantine themselves. Everybody's got to stay home because you don't know. I would never know that you're under quarantine and you got tested because you have some symptoms. So I think that's an example for people that you don't know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You don't. I mean, and I think it's, information is power, and we just got to make sure as business does recover, that us as a travel industry, that we're transparent and we're doing everything we can. I think the segment that's going to be the toughest to recover is group business, right? I mean, I think transient business will start to trickle in and start to come back, right? Because people say, well, I'm isolated in my room, I don't have to worry about it. But there's going to be a hesitation to bring big conferences and meetings back together, right? Where it's 1,000 people in a room clustered together. And I think that, unfortunately, will be the segment of the business that will lag, is group business and conferences, where people hesitate to be in high density environments.
It's going to be interesting when we come out of this, how long before people are comfortable shaking hands again.
It's a great point. I mean, it could be, this is a cultural shift. Maybe it's the elbow bump from now on. I mean,
I think so. I've always been uncomfortable with human contact anyway, so it's a perfect opportunity for people to come around to my side of things. We've got our next group of people all wrapped up. Sloan, I don't know if you want to stick around and talk to the good folks at Boston University, or
sure, I'd love to hear what they're saying. I'll hang tight for a few minutes.
Beautiful. Cool. And whenever you got to go, just let us know. You have to go right there. This is about being fluid. Anthony, you got your finger up.
Yeah, anytime I have my finger up, that I have one more question. Not a question, statement. Sloan, we've been interviewing people every day, and we're getting information from everyone. And I truly appreciate your information. I think yours was the most concise, interesting, really down to the bare bones information that people are really looking for, everything from debt to unemployment. And so again, the reason the show is important is because people like you, we're just two guys trying to get people like you on to give us your perspective. And I know I learned something today, and I'm sure our audience learned something. So what you're doing, I hope to have you back. What you're doing is critical in dispersing this information, because there's too much information and it's not always accurate, and you seem to really have your hand on the pulse. So thank you very much.
I appreciate that. And I just, before you bring on the other people,
of course.
Harry Truman was famous for saying during the middle of the height of World War II, America was not built on fear. America was built on courage, on imagination, unbeatable determination to get the job done at hand. And people listening, we're in our World War III, but America wasn't built on fear. And so this too shall pass. That would be what I'd leave you with.
Well, I think that those are great words.
Excellent. And I really appreciate you being here as well. So, and hopefully we'll get to have another segment with you soon. But in the meantime, let's hear what everyone at Boston University is experiencing. So let me bring in first Dean. Hello. Dean Arun Upneja. Is that how you pronounce your name? Because I'm not sure. Yes. All right. Then we got Assistant Professor Taylor Peyton is joining the show, and also with us, Leora Lanz from the faculty side of Boston University. Welcome, 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 one and all. I hope.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you taking time out of your day today during this difficult time to share what's going on with you folks over there. We got a great audience from all over the country and other parts of the world as well today. Doctor, maybe you could start us up with saying, since you're the dean over there, what is the situation at Boston University? How are you folks coping? What's going on with the student community? We cannot hear you, sir. You must be muted. Still muted. Leora, why don't you answer that question?
I'll get it going until Dean Upneja gets his microphone back on. We're at the School of Hospitality. Sloan, let me just say, first of all, it was great listening to you, because it's inspiring, despite all the troubles we have going on in the industry. Our students need to hear this too, and we're at the School of Hospitality, so naturally we're in the industry, and we're trying to keep students interested and excited about our industry and getting through our industry, because we're going to need them for the future. So thank you for sharing what you just did.
Thank you.
Arun, I don't know if you've got your mic back on.
I did.
Great.
On this virtual platform, and just figured out how to do this one. So there has been, as you've heard, a lot of disruption for everyone's lives, and the same thing is happening with students as well, with having to leave the dorms, most of them, and all the instruction has moved to virtual platforms. So this is not just online learning; it's actually remote instruction where we are holding classes as normal. Faculty are there teaching at the same time that they were supposed to be teaching. They're holding office hours. The faculty had to work within a week to change all their pedagogy from teaching in class to teaching remotely. They did a fantastic job. The staff are working pretty much day and night to help the students and make sure that they don't suffer. Faculty are holding office hours. We are doing many other things to take care of the students. They are front and center for us at the moment. We are holding town halls. We are sending detailed communications. So we're doing a lot of things to keep the morale up, like Leora said, and keep the ship going.
And do you have, if you want me asking, do you have crisis mental health professionals, maybe more than you usually have, to help students through this? I'm in my 50s. I've seen a lot, and I haven't seen this, but I've seen enough to kind of prepare me for a lot of stuff. So when you're an 18, 19-year-old kid going through this, I have two daughters right now in college. It's a lot. So what are you doing for not only keeping them busy, but in a crisis, how are you helping them?
So, but the university has thrown a lot of resources in terms of mental health and behavioral counseling. But at the school level, we are doing many things. So we have started creating virtual communities where there's some students are, we've asked the dean's hosts and other student leaders to put up, for example, one student hosted a dinner the other day, a virtual dinner. So everyone can Zoom in and sort of have a conversation. Next week, we are also, Professor Lanz is Zooming in some guests from Africa to do a safari, virtual safari. So we are doing a lot of these virtual communities, keeping up a lot of communication going. All the faculty are communicating extensively with the students, doing Zoom, office hours, teaching. For example, the other day we had, when the university announced that in a few days, students will have to leave the dorms, and some faculty said, should we still hold our class? And actually it turned out the students wanted the Zoom classes to be held, and Leora can just talk about that for a minute as to what the atmosphere was. But the students want to remain connected with the school, with their peers, with the faculty, with the staff. And so we are doing the best we can to facilitate that.
Glenn, if I could chime in, first of all, for you,
Oh, yeah, of course.
It's got to be strange to hear me called Professor Lanz. We've known each other a long time, so I'm sure that's odd in the first place.
I know. Well, I knew you'd always get to this point, so I've been calling you that for years. Albeit it was doing it in a sarcastic,
way, right?
snotty way.
Yeah.
But now you've actually earned it.
Now it's there.
What's interesting about these 6 videos? We look like the Brady Bunch. If I look down and you look up and we point to each other,
yeah, we could do that. We could do. Our students don't know who the Brady Bunch is, though, Anthony. But...
No, they really don't. And I was actually going to make a Professor Gilligan's Island joke, but I'm trying real hard through this crisis to try to only make references from the 21st century and not from our growing up years. But we got to hear from Taylor. Yeah. We haven't heard from Taylor yet at this point. Taylor, how are you adapting to the situation? What are your students thinking about?
First question, is my mic working?
Yeah,
it is.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think we're seeing a lot of informal leadership from our professors when it comes to what we're doing with our classes in this transition. Last week was crazy because it was the first week we transitioned to remote learning. So there were a lot of things going on with the students in their personal lives, just changing locations, figuring out where they were going to live. I would like to say this week, it feels better. We have more students settled down in a place where they are self-quarantined or with friends and family in small groups. And so we have, for my classes last week, we slowed down the content. I'm teaching HR this semester, and I invited a anxiety martial arts expert in to do workshop activities with them on meditation and just to process as a group how we are doing as part of us just becoming whole again. And so little opportunities like that, I think the students are really enjoying. Also, we're learning Zoom, some of them for the first time. And so we slowed down. I'm an 8 a.m. Monday class, so I had the students' first round on this new technology.
Right.
So that was an adventure, but we got through it. So I think it's getting better this week.
That's good. I had an 8 a.m. Monday class back in college. I think I went once. But I still got a D. So, all you people out there, I was able to. I was able to get a lot of it right without knowing a darn thing. So, sorry,
Anthony,
Leora.
That's continue. Okay. That's okay. I want to actually go back to Anthony's question on, how are we taking care of the students? Because and it was really, I was one of the professors, or I was among the professors who did reach out to the dean when we got the notice from the university that, because originally we were told the entire university was going to close through a certain date. And then we found out, hey, everybody's got to evacuate the dorms by Sunday. And it was Tuesday, and I teach a Wednesday night class. And I thought, how on earth am I going to ask these students to sit in a class virtually when they have to pack up? And we had just been off the precipice of spring break. Literally now, when I'm conducting my classes, we're in 5 different time zones. I mean, our students are scattered all over the world. Some are stuck from where they were on spring break, and some of them went to their home countries, to feel safe with their families. So we are really working under different situation right now. The students have adapted brilliantly. I reached out to the students last week and said, listen, in light of what we just heard and that we all have to move or get ourselves settled in a new place, and it was such a short amount of time, I'm still going to meet with you. Thank you, Dean Upneja, for encouraging me to do that, because I really felt sort of uncomfortable hosting a class. But I said, I'm still going to come on. Let's just talk. And then if we want to move on from there, we will. And this was a Wednesday night, my time. So now imagine folks with different time zones. And sure enough, I spent the first 45 minutes with the students just to find out, honestly, taking roll call and finding out, tell me where you are. Are you with folks that you love? Are you feeling safe? Do you need anything from us? And we've all been doing this. I mean, all of the faculty, we've been checking in with our students just to make sure they're safe and that they're comfortable. Even this, when I asked everybody again, where are you? Some folks are not in the same place where they were last week because they've had to make adjustments. So we're really a tight community in the school. And so we're reaching out just as a faculty. We care about these students a lot, graduate, undergraduate, whatever the situation is. So far, I have to say that class did not last just the 45 minutes of talking and getting us through this. But it really ended up being almost 3.5 hours long.
Wow.
Because we got our work done. I asked the students, do you want to move on? Otherwise, we're just going to knock it and we're going to resume it next week. And everyone chimed in and said, we're ready. Let's go. So the students are really.
When I was there last year, the warmth I felt in talking to you and talking to Taylor and talking to the team, I felt something. I always say it's not what you say, it's how you make people feel. And I felt something. And I know when I was driving up there was a little snowstorm that I got involved in.
Yes.
I almost had a little bit of a golf. I didn't get in an accident, but it was pretty intense. I remember getting there and everybody was really genuinely concerned. And so right now, that's what we need. People aren't going to really remember everything they did during this time, but they're going to remember how everybody made them feel, whether it be their home or whether it be yourself at school. So it's really critical. And again, I felt it when I was there, the genuine care that you have for your students and everyone around you has for your students. So I felt it. And I just want to make sure I said that.
Thanks, Anthony. And that's hospitality, isn't it? I mean, that's really what's in our DNA, is the compassion and the service for others and connecting with people. So, now these students are seeing our world and hospitality in a whole different light.
Yeah, they sure are.
That's interesting. Glenn, can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Sloan, I'm going to put you on the spot.
I was just going to ask him something too. I love it. Go for it, Anthony.
They have students, hospitality students, right? And they just saw what happened. Our industry is basically being closed down. And it's pretty scary for people in the industry, let alone people thinking about going in the industry. So if they have a student saying, yeah, I was thinking about hospitality, but now I'm thinking about maybe going into a government job, or I'm going into medical, or a job that I know will get me through in times like this. What do you tell that student?
I'd refer back to the quote that I gave around Harry Truman, that don't make a decision on fear. If you're passionate about travel, this too shall pass, and we'll be back, and we'll be back in a bigger way. This is unlike anything we've ever faced. This is a generational moment, but there will be a vaccine. There will be a point where occupancies hit a new watermark high. We're not going away. And I would say, if you love travel, you're passionate about hospitality, then pursue that career. We will be fine long term.
I will say this,
so they don't just
guys.
Give
that
CEO jobs to anybody, huh? You have to be pretty smart, because that was like the best answer. I got tears in my eyes.
Yeah.
And I think I believe everything you just said. I'm sorry, Glenn.
No, it's all good. I will say this, Sloan, that no matter what happens in the future, everything is going to seem much easier by comparison with any of the challenges that you face going forward. So to take a horrible negative and spin it into a positive, I think there is some sort of silver lining that could come out of this for all of us, because once we handle such difficulties, I got to tell you, I can't imagine things feeling so rough as now ever again.
Well, and you also, not to take this angle, but everybody was calling for when the end of the cycle is going to happen. Well, this was a event driven like 9/11.
Right.
So once we get to the other side of this, which we will, I can't say for how long it will be, but I think by next year, RevPAR will definitely be growing year on year, that we have the opportunity to have another 7, 8, 9 year good run. And so if you're a student and you're looking to come out, if you're a May graduate this year, I get it. It is going to be tough, but if you're not graduating till next year or beyond, you may be graduating into a business vertical that is booming, back to booming. So, and for the May graduates or someone graduating this year, my advice to them would be, stay the course. This is a tough period, but we'll get through it. And then a lot of employers are going to be hiring like a firestorm as business comes back.
And there are people going to go start their own business. There are going to be people that decide to retire. There's going to be a path that you're probably going to be able to get on that wasn't there prior to this. So if you are passionate, I wrote something the other day on the internet. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. I happened to wake up, and the first line I wrote was, "I love this industry more than I love anything, or as much as I love anything." And that was, to me, like, okay, I ain't going anywhere. I ain't thinking about doing something else or another industry or going open, a clothing store or something. Like I read that line to myself. I'm reading that line to myself every single day. I love this industry more than I love anything. So if you can say that to yourself, don't go anywhere, because the opportunity is great. And if you look at what we do, everything from chefs to designers to construction to your position, my position, there's so many positions. There's no other career field that has as many opportunities. So like you said, take a breath and come back. But any student out there that wants to be on the show, that wants to talk to us, please DM us, and we'd love to get your perspective.
Anthony, I don't know if the dean has spoken to some students or Taylor, but I'm anxious to hear you.
Yeah,
I do have some input from some students that I wanted to share with you.
Yeah, and I also want to hear from Dean Upneja, because we have not heard from you in just a little bit. How are you seeing all of this that Anthony's talking about?
So I think I just wanted to sort of add to this conversation that given that the entire economy is sort of ground to a halt, this kind of just points to the important role that hospitality industry plays in the economy. So this is just a temporary phenomena. This is going to pass. But the entire country has gone to a halt with travel and hotels and restaurants shut down. So this is a very, very important growth industry. One of the things we do in our school is we focus on the fact that we are in the business of creating experiences for people. And that's going to keep getting more and more important. And I'm going to, at some point, Dr. Peyton will jump in as well. But that has been one of the focus that we have been developing an expertise in our school.
Yeah, part of creating experiences for people involves really focusing on quality of interactions. And that's what we're teaching our students. That's part of the value system for hospitality, to create the places and the spaces where people can connect and build community. It's critical. When you look at people's psychological needs, their basic psychological needs, belongingness is one of them. And the hospitality industry is huge for creating that opportunity for people. Look at what we're doing now that we're online, right? We're going stir crazy in our houses. We need that connectedness. And so I think lots of students are recognizing that the core value that we preach.
Well, I agree. And one of the things I'd offer up, to Boston University, as well as any other university that's on the line, we have to pay it forward. And as a young executive, I recognize that. So if I could speak to student, classes or to student bodies and, give my perspective, I want you to know that the offer's on the table and happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sloan, so much. I do want to share, if that's all right with you. I did collect, and Taylor, I don't know if you had a chance to talk to some of your students, but in class yesterday, which was like this, but we were in class, I did ask, and the seniors are, Sloan, to your point, the seniors are nervous, right? As are our graduate students who would be finishing up in May, very, very nervous. And some, we know the brands that are involved. Some have already said, hey, listen, we can't honor the experience that we promised. And some have said, some are coming through actually in some areas, but in general, it's, oh my goodness, we're starting all over again. But where do we begin? And so I know some of the advice that we're giving to our students is just sort of watch, because the truth is none of our students, I haven't really heard from any of our students that they want to leave. Anthony, they have the passion you're talking about. When you woke up saying, I love this industry, our students feel that same way. They don't want to leave the industry. I think they want to know how they can actually take it to the next level.
And honestly, they may have to take a step and say, you know what, I have to wait 3 months, 5 months, 6 months. I need to pay my bills. They may have to take a step and do something to sustain themselves. They may have to. Let's be real.
Absolutely, we all do, right?
But with that said, this industry, America goes the way this industry goes. Okay, this industry. Sloan was saying that if we're not careful, we'll be close to 2 million people. Do I understand that right, Sloan? Laid off.
Yeah, they're calling for 2 million jobs related to the hotel industry will be furloughed or basically unemployment status by the end of March.
So think about that number. America cannot prosper without this industry.
Right.
End of story.
Right. Additionally, not to be a negative Nelly, Anthony, but they're talking as many as 6.6 million total out of work if this continues on for a little bit longer. So I just wanted to say that to emphasize your point that you're about to make.
But what we have to as a school, though, Anthony. We have to, as a school, we've got to keep inspiring the students who have the passion and the love for the business, whether it's food and beverage and restaurants or even health and fitness or wellness and lodging, of course. We're going to need leaders to take us through this, and to learn from what we're going through right now so that they can take our industry to its next chapter.
And I imagine in hospitality, do you guys have an entrepreneurial class that they take?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I would love if I can be a guest in one of those classes or do a class, because right now you can stay in hospitality and still be an entrepreneur. Look at Glenn and I. Okay, I cannot travel. All the speaking engagements are gone. All my clients don't have hotels to run right now. So the 3 to 5 businesses, depending on the day that I'm running and that we're basically bringing in income, I am now doing this to bring people together. And so everyone has to be able to pivot. Some people can pivot and still sustain their lifestyle. I'm an old guy, so I'm used to saving and not being in a position when I was a kid to have money. So money was important to me. So I can take the time to teach now. But other people have to be able to do something to bring in income. So if they have to step away, that's fine. But why not step away into a position that is still in the hospitality industry?
I can tell you that in our program, and I'll let the dean finish my sentences here because I'm sure he's thinking the same thing. Listen, we teach entrepreneurial spirit in our school. We call ourselves the business school with a heart. Thank you, Dr. Muller, for teaching us that. But we're the business school with a heart in hospitality. And so the adaptability, the ability for us to be resilient, to turn things into silver linings, we're all living it and we have to teach it. And that's what we're doing in our classrooms right now. I can share with you in my class alone, we've had to shift. We're doing marketing plans and we literally came back from spring break and I said, the game has just changed. Put everything into the appendix. We've got to shift gears. We have to learn how to be resilient. We have to think entrepreneurially. And a lot of these students today want to create entrepreneurial experiences in our industry. They do want to have these young, fresh startup thinking. It's not necessarily the traditional jobs in hospitality that we see from our students, and Arun, I'm sure you could talk to that more.
Right. So I think this word adaptability is key. I think the students need to learn that and understand that. And Professor Lanz is doing that. But in addition, what's going to happen to our industry? There is going to be some changes. I mean, this is a huge traumatic event to our society. And so, even though I agree that this is a temporary phenomenon, 2 months, 3 months, it will pass, life will go back to normal, but there will be some changes in the way we go out and eat and celebrate. So what are those changes? And I think that's something that we now need to start pivoting and thinking about how things will change and how the students need to be taught and what kind of lessons they need to learn and what kind of skill set they need to acquire so that they can go out and be part of this change rather than just observing and trying to follow.
Right, it's a great point, and I got a question here that kind of folds into that. We have an executive chef from the Sea Lazy U Ranch. From a chef's perspective, we have this major displacement in the private restaurant industry. I have chef owner friends calling me, explaining they're unable to reopen. Will this create a higher draw to the hotel sector? Because it may present a little more stability. But with this mass closure ensuing, that we'll have a flux and flexibility. So how can we create opportunity for everybody with thinking about these things? One thing I see hospitality adjacent is the opening of all these ghost kitchen type of restaurants. How do you folks see this? Maybe we could hear from Taylor, because we haven't heard from Taylor in a little while to get this part of the conversation started.
Well, I wanted to go back to the conversation about adaptability.
Yeah, of course you do.
Because we're telling our students is that you need to get comfortable with not knowing. And we don't know everything in the situation. And so we need to practice not having answers sometimes and being present and resilient and mindful anyway, so that we regulate and can control as much as we can without trying to over control.
Glenn, I'm going to try to answer the question a touch. I don't know that it's an answer, but it's an example.
If not, just pretend you're a politician, act as if you're answering it, and then pivot to something unrelated to trick us.
No, okay? I'll just share an example to try to help. I want to be as truthful as possible. You know, we work in our school very closely with the greater Boston hotel community, the restaurant community. We've got a lot of great relationships with the local chefs and restaurateurs. And they have had to be extraordinarily creative at this time, whether it's going to a pickup or delivery service, which from a restaurant that may not have been originally designed that way, you know, doing things to keep their employees, you know, busy and working. I'll share one example that's been intriguing me, and it's Chef Andy Husbands, who oversees this. He's the owner of the Smoke Shop restaurants, barbecue restaurants, and Joanne Chang, who's the creator and principal of Flower Bakery, which is also another brand of bakeries in Boston. Joanne happened to be our commencement speaker last year, and Andy is someone who's worked with our classes very, very closely, and they've joined forces to create a virtual pop-up, right? So they've created ways to, you know, order online. Here's two great premier chefs that are coming together to offer their limited menu. Order it, come pick it up from one of the locations. And they're just trying to stay creative during this interim period. This doesn't answer the question about post, but during this interim period, we're seeing a lot of this sort of creative ways to help the community and pay it forward. So, you know, will it mean for our friend who's asking the question about chefs going to the hotel space? You know, I think the opportunities are still unknown. Of how we're going to get through this and come through this, but we all have to be sort of very open-minded and adaptable as to where we can bring our talents.
Right, Glenn.
Yes, sir.
I just want to quickly add that you know, as we had discussed previously, I think we are all very social people. So people are going to want to come out. I mean, I think everyone is just feeling so frustrated, cooped up. It's been a week or so. People are going to want to come out and meet and go to restaurants. And unfortunately, anytime that there is a transition, some people are going to get hurt in the process.
That's right.
But we all need.
And I think you just said something about being cooped up, and I think what we have to do is we have to give ourselves permission to just relax. This is your situation.
Right.
You know, we're all in very nice jail right now. Thank God we're in a, you know, we're all in our homes. We're all in comfortable environments. You know, you can't shake the cage and say, "Get me out of here" when you're in jail. We're in comfortable places that we can't leave. Thank God for that, and just relax. I've had to talk to people that are cooped up and they're just crazy. They just want to walk, they just want to go mingle, and they just want to go talk to their neighbor. And that's fine if you cross the street, but we just got to give ourselves permission to enjoy the environment we built for ourselves, instead of trying to, when is this going to end? When is this going to end? I need this to end. We've really got to quiet our brains in that, because I know I have to quiet my brain. You know, going from a guy that's in top 10% of miles last year on Delta to, again, being in a very comfortable environment, but I can't leave is a little tough. So I think that's some advice I want to give to people listening, and also to anybody here, and also to myself.
Anthony, with the students, because obviously everybody's, kept in our own quarters. But classes in a way is a relief. It's not ideal. And Lord knows I miss being in that classroom so badly. I miss it. I crave it. But this is what we have to do. It's temporary. And the fact that we can connect and keep it going in a way, and because we're in the industry, we're following what's going on, and we're adapting our coursework along the way so that it's relevant and that it's meaningful, and the students are going to learn from this.
Right.
So at least, while we're cooped up, we still have a way, thank goodness for technology, but for the sake of the students, thank goodness we have this opportunity to stay connected.
That's right. And let me add this little part before we start to head towards the wrap up part of the show. Michael Schindler, who's CEO of president at Four Corner Advisors, who's going to be joining us on Tuesday, says that folks like him who have this experience should be making themselves available to classes at BU, Cornell, and many other great state university programs. Now, particularly now that everybody's kind of away, it's a great no-cost way for the university hotel programs to tap into industry expertise. So perhaps
Thank you.
what we could do, anybody that is interested in participating in something like this, drop Anthony and me a line, direct message us, just like we've been talking to encourage you to do. And then we can connect you to Boston University and folks from other universities as well. We're hoping to have the dean from UNLV on next week. Stowe Shoemaker, for example. Anthony's working on getting Cornell to participate. So we really want to help build this community to help our students as well that are out there.
That means a lot to us, Glenn, because you know what? We want to keep these students inspired and engaged and sticking with us. They have a passion. And I know you want to wrap up shortly, but I do want to share a few words from some.
Yes, please do. I know. Hey, we've got nowhere to go, Leora.
There's no rush, right? Although my class is at night tonight, so it's okay.
The only thing we have to do after this is deal with crises. Let's stay in our safe space for a little while, all right?
Taylor, you already had 2 classes today, didn't you?
I did, coming off.
Yeah, she's right off of her classes, and I've got classes tonight. It's not the best. It's not the same thing as listening to the students directly, Anthony, by any means. And Sloan and Michael Schindler will take you up, because to keep us engaged and excited and hopeful is what we're doing, and we need more of your input. So thank you. I can tell you, in class yesterday, I asked the students, what are you taking away from this? And there's definitely that sense for the seniors of sort of where am I going to go? But here is Samantha Cooper, who's a senior. She's watching fitness centers, for example, like Lululemon, she said, and Planet Fitness. They're being extraordinarily adaptable, changing their model, going online, connecting, offering things for free, and keeping their audiences. And she's seeing how adaptability is something that we're all doing, living, and can learn from, and how to be resilient when we have to at a moment's notice. Mara, who's one of our graduate students, we were talking about food. What this has shown us, especially with this craving and this desire for the restaurant community to help them, food means so much more than just nourishment, doesn't it? It means people getting together. It means socializing. It means celebration. It means sharing. And we've seen that in what's been coming together now. And it's one of our professors, Dr. Muller, who wrote this piece on experience seekers versus convenience seekers. And we're looking for the experience seekers. So it's made her appreciate what food would stand for. Josh is one of our juniors, and he's been learning. He wants to be a real estate developer in the hotel space, and he's watching the market right now, of course. Right. So he's learning a lot about that. Another Samantha, who's a senior, she's never seen our student body come together as strongly and as connected as we are now. She goes, it was tough to go from excitement with the jobs to disappointment right away, but there's such a positive energy that she's feeling in our building that she's extraordinarily hopeful, and that was nice to hear. So we're getting some interesting comments from the students. Shan's one of our seniors. She's actually stuck in Europe right now, but she said to see how hospitality is responding in a time of crisis, it gives her inspiration to stick through and stick with our industry. So we're going to keep these conversations going. Taylor, did you have a chance to talk to some of your students?
Yeah, so Eval, sophomore, she was talking about how she's looking forward to getting experience in the future when the time is right. But hopefully hospitality companies can be reminded about the importance of continuous training and education so that their staff can learn to be adaptable, not just for a crisis like this, but also for crises in the future. So a lesson for continuous training and education. And then I have Gary, a junior, who's talking about the benefits of finding the lesson in this, because it's a time of chaos, but can we try to shift out of panic mode, find value in organizing ourselves daily, exercising self-discipline in households when you have people, family members, pets around you, and just letting go of the anxiety to be full of love and joy and just breathe. So to use it as an opportunity to practice those things. Anthony, you spoke to that a little bit earlier. And then finally, Diego, a sophomore, was saying that he's excited that from this, the industry will have to innovate. Hospitality very often blends the tech with the touch. And my goodness, are we challenged in this moment to blend the tech with the touch as we're converting everything to remote learning. So those are my students that came forward.
Excellent. Arun?
So I'm very, very hopeful. I think the students have responded very positively. All the students I've spoken to, particularly I want to mention seniors that they are really feeling the hurt at the moment because they were on spring break and they were told, okay, fine, if you cannot, don't come back or go back to your homes. They did not have a chance to say goodbye to their friends. And you spend 4 years in a school getting to know people and getting to know the faculty, getting to know the classes, and suddenly all of that is taken away. Just a big, big wake-up call, and they're feeling the hurt, and we're trying to do the best we can to take care of them. I think everyone has responded very positively. We are going to come out of it strong.
Beautiful.
I can only imagine when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, in a situation where, I wanted to graduate school. I wanted to finish my military career. And there was so much anxiety to what's going to happen in my next chapter of my life. My twin daughters are in college, they're in juniors. And exactly what you just said, everything has been kind of changed for them. So dealing with the normal anxiety that we all dealt with at 18, 19, 20 years old, and now put this on, where we've never dealt with anything. And for us, this is a lot. So to put this on 19, 20-year-old people, we all have to understand the sensitive environment that they're in. And we shouldn't listen. If people need to break down, if people need a moment, and that leads me to a question I meant to ask before, but I forgot. And this is on behalf of my children. Will you be grading on a curve?
I'm going to let the dean answer that one.
Thank you for.
Come on, Dean. Don't be political. Give me the right answer.
So I think that one of the very first message that I sent to the faculty and the students was that we all need to be patient. We need to be patient with each other. We need to be patient with ourselves. I think life teaches such big lessons, So in the classroom, if you have to be flexible, if you have to be patient, if you have to modify, please feel free to do so. And make sure that you understand students they're stuck somewhere. They may not be home. They might be all over the world. Many times you have students at the moment, they're in China. So you open up a class you're teaching a class at 2 p.m. here, might be, in the middle of the night or much later for them. So I think my sense is, and I'm going to let the two faculty speak, that everyone is being patient, everyone is being flexible, and taking into account all the disruption that has been caused to the students' life through this.
Excellent. So, Sloan, how about a second final words from you?
Two things. I recently read Atomic Habits by James Clear. He was actually the keynote speaker at our leadership conference on March 4th. So that was only 21 days ago, 3 weeks ago. And my, oh my, how the world has changed. And I would say to people, your habits are you. And so maintaining, make sure progress, not perfection. If you have a dark moment that you refer back to, having good habits in these times, even if you're in quarantine. And I would just come back to what I said before, is that, Harry Truman had it right. America was not built on fear. America was built on courage. This too shall pass. And so, we will get through this and we'll come out better. And, I'm on LinkedIn. If anybody's on and needs, wants to even talk to a CEO and is troubled with the times, feel free to reach out. And,
Thank you.
we'll get through this.
I think that's great. Anthony?
Very important question. Why didn't you hire me as your keynote on March 4th? And why didn't you bring Glenn and I in to do our podcast?
Well, to be fair, I tried to put something together with Sloan and I had a schedule conflict. So
Glenn, we can talk about our leadership summit where you were supposed to be, but we did have to move that, didn't we now? Yeah. So
I tried to get Glenn, Anthony, and he said I'm too busy.
No, I did not say that. I said, unfortunately, I had another commitment to my good friend, Craig Sullivan, over at the California Lodging Investment Conference, and I was very sad that we couldn't make it work. I was hoping to do it next year, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with budgets come next year's time. But before we wrap up, I got to tell you, I yearned for a day when we thought about bringing student bodies together. Man, it was a successful night at the fraternity party, not what's happening here these days. So I want to thank you all for being here. And again, keeping this conversation open is just so important for all of us out there. And what you have done today, all of you, has really provided a great resource for our audience, for the students out there, and for all of those folks that are struggling right now and trying to find some meaning to help get them through what has been an awfully challenging time. Anthony, before we wrap up, I just want to give you the last word.
On my business card, it says passion changes everything. I believe that to my soul. You have to be passionate about what you do, and it'll change your environment, and we will get back together because, as you said, America wasn't built on fear. Every generation has a burden to bear. Right now, this is what's in front of us.
Well, that's right. That's absolutely right. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, both in the audience and on our terrific panel. And we will see you tomorrow at noon with another incredible show. I'm stalling right now because I don't remember exactly who's on, but I do know we're starting off at noon with Raul Leal. He's the CEO of Virgin Hotels, and Michael Schindler. He's the president of Four Corner Advisors as well. And then Chris Green will be back to share a little bit more about what he's up to as we follow his real-time story unfold. So thanks again for being with us today. So for Arun, Taylor, Leora, Sloan, Anthony, and myself, Glenn, thanks for checking in, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.